little cheerleader in my brain is going, be affected, be affected.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pineapple Improv Show. I'm your host, Mike Brown, and today we are talking collaboration, using improv to help you collaborate in your work life. Here joining me today is author of Improv Made Easier, Mr. Rich Baker, coming all the way from Los Angeles, California. Rich, how are you today?
Great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to talk to you, and I'm excited to be on your show.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm always down for a conversation with you, sir. So, can you tell us a little bit about, like, who are you? Who are you really? But,
Who are you?
yeah, where do you work? What do you do for a living?
Yes, I live in Los Angeles, as you said, and I've since 2007 was the last time I had like a job. Ever since then, I've been a self-employed, whether you call it, contractor, freelancer, entrepreneur, whatever. I gig, and whether it's an acting gig, a writing gig, teaching improv, performing. Um, I host karaoke. I do facilitation workshops for companies and non-for-profits. So I just kind of can do a lot of different things.
You're a Renaissance man, as they say.
Something like that.
So, in your work life, how important is collaboration in what it is that you do? Can you give us any examples?
Well, sure. So when I go to companies and I put on workshops, so I'll teach things like creativity or team building to people who are not performers by any stretch. They're customer service reps, they're salespeople, etc. And anyone could learn improv exercises and teach people how to do them. Like it's just like anything you could learn anything step by step and regurgitate it to people. That's fine. But in order for this group of people who's getting this big loud punchlining comedian who's coming in and doing bits and whatnot, in order to get them on board, I have to first unite them as a group and with me. So I have to bond them to each other and me, or else nothing I do is going to stick whatsoever. So I got to get people to collaborate basically within about 5 to 10 minutes tops.
So, how do you do that? Like, what's the secret sauce?
There's, we can talk about subtleties, but I mean, it's not a real big secret. If you want people to bond together as a group, you got to set an environment that allows them to do so, right? So, whether I'm teaching improv students, whether I'm teaching, people at a company who have never been on stage before in their life, I say that, the whole vibe here is we're here to support each other, make each other look good. I probably repeat that 10, 15 times an hour.
I'm
And
sorry,
I
say it
say,
again.
we're here to support each other and make each other look good.
I'm sorry, say it again.
We're here to support each other and make each other look
We got a few more times to go before we
good.
break the record.
Right? I mean, it's not original to me at all, but it's if that's got to be the first thing, and I have to set the tone there. Right? So I'm like, I'm here to support you. I'm here to make you look good. I'm not here to make fun of you. I'm not here to put you in a position that's going to make you weird or uncomfortable or anything. I'm going to test your limits a little bit and things that you've done, but I'm not going to like, oh, this guy can't do nothing, right? Like anything I do, which is like I call gentle ribbing, is going to be very much about like making them look good. I'm like, isn't this guy great? Oh man, we love failure. Failure's our favorite thing. Let's celebrate this guy. He failed. Woo!
So, when you follow up with your clients, based on like improv workshops and whatever that you've taught in like a corporate environment, what has everyone's response been in terms of how their work life, or specifically their collaboration at work, has improved?
With one-time workshops, usually that effect is only the first within like a week afterwards or so. So most of the feedback is like everyone had a great time. Everyone, felt like they were a little closer together. They had some real concrete takeaways. But the main, you really hear the stories when people you work with either once a month, or I have one client that works with me once a week, and he says like their meetings are better. They laugh more like in their meetings where I'm not there and they're just talking business, a finance firm. There's nothing less funny than the numbers and money, right? But these guys, they say they laugh, they come up with, they're not afraid to share stupid ideas that eventually can often lead to good ones, not always, but just the environment to foster those is better, and that people
And
don't
just
take
to
themselves.
clarify, maybe they're not necessarily like bad ideas or stupid ideas, but they're ideas that have a prejudgment attached to them, which people tend to be more reluctant to share.
Sure, but I mean, I'll go one step further and say, give me your bad ideas, give me your worst ideas, right? Like Aaron Sorkin in his master class on writing, he tells his writers, he's like, give me the worst idea that we could possibly throw in this, right? Because if you're willing to be comfortable sharing literally bad ideas, then we take the seriousness off of it, we take the heaviness off of it.
Yeah.
When people can laugh more, take themselves less seriously, and be like, I don't know, what if we had a bunch of unicorns come from Mars? And they're like, write it down. That environment is going to foster better connection and better ideas overall.
So, what is an example based on your history, based on your work profile? Um, can you give us an example of a time when teaching collaboration or getting everyone on the same page or feeling comfortable with each other in the same room together? Can you give us an example of when that may have failed spectacularly?
Yeah, sure. You know, when I was first doing this, just like anyone, when you start out doing something, I wasn't as good as I am now. And, I remember putting people in positions because I was kind of regurgitating what my mentors taught me and what I'd seen other people do without that foreknowledge of how to couch it and make it comfortable and safe for everyone. So, I got a group up there and I had them play what we call string of pearls. Other people might call it different things, but it's where you're like, if you have 10 people, you're going to tell a 10-line story, but you can tell it out of order, right? So someone's going to come up in the seventh spot and tell a random line, and then we'll build the story from there. And I'd seen this work with corporate people before, and I've seen it work since, but it's still a pretty high bar of difficulty for non-creative, non-improvisers to do.
There's a lot of
And
moving parts. Trying to tell a story out of sequence, it's hard to wrap your brain around.
absolutely. And you're making it up, and you're kind of like, even though you're up there with nine other people, like when you say your line, it's very solo activity. And this one guy literally just went up there and goes, I don't understand, and then just walked out of the room.
What?
Yeah. He was so frustrated because, his ego was telling him, oh, people are gonna laugh at me, they're gonna look bad. And I clearly at that point hadn't done the work that I needed to do to make him feel safe. And he's one of many examples that I think about whenever I do this now, of like, I never want to have that kind of thing happen again.
Rich, I want to pivot just ever so slightly. I wonder if you'd be up for playing a little improv game with me. Very
Oh,
basic, very rudimentary. It's called Yes and. So we're just going to tell a story that has never been told before. After each line of dialogue, each one of us are just going to say the words yes and then continue on with the story, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. You down to play?
down.
Excellent. So I'll kick it off. Once upon a time, there was a an ant who lived inside of an anthill.
Yes. And that anthill was one of the biggest in the whole town. It had literally millions of other ants living in it.
Yes, and with all of those millions of other ants living on top of the biggest anthill mound in the city, there was one ant who wanted to be the best of them all.
Yes, and because he wanted to be better than every ant, he decided to crawl up to the top of that hill and yell it out to everyone.
And when he yelled, everyone heard him yell spectacularly, and they wanted nothing more but to push him off of the anthill.
Yes, and as they pushed him, he rolled down the hill a long way because it was a big hill, and finally plopped to the bottom.
Yes, and when he got to the bottom, he realized the folly of his malicious designs to be the best of all the ants.
Yes, and the moral is, if you want to be the best, keep it to yourself.
And scene. Perfect. Awesome. Oh, Rich, that was so fun.
That's
What a
great.
wonderfully silly, ridiculous story that we just created together.
With a moral.
With a moral, keep it to yourself.
Keep it.
Uh, Rich, you teach improv as well as I do. What is the purpose of saying yes and in between each line of dialogue?
In a sense, it's a way to validate and be inspired. Right. So yes is everything that's happened before now. I agree with. It's happened. There's no contradiction here. And means and I'm inspired by that for the next thing. So, if you say there was an ant living in an ant hill, and I go, yeah, but he wasn't an ant, he was a cockroach and he was living in an apartment. It'd be like, well, then what was the point of the ant hill? It's like it didn't mean anything, right? So that's no. Most students, and I'm sure you talk about your experience with this, can get their head behind yes. The and part is the hard part because they think, okay, if I acknowledge it, then I say whatever. It's like what matters is being inspired by what you've acknowledged for the next thing.
When teaching this exercise, how often do you encounter that one person in the group who wants to say the funny thing or they want to say the weird thing, and then it just throws everything else off?
Oh, all the time. And I look forward to it because, that's the teaching moment, right? And you go, okay, what was the moment in there that felt a little wonky? It was in this, right? Here's why. Because when we don't and we and without inspiration, then it's like dividing. It's like I'm going down a highway and then I just jump to another highway, right? When we yes and we keep going down that same highway.
Can we try that a little bit? Can we try? I will do my best to yes and what you're throwing at me, but I want you to no but
You
everything.
got it.
All right, here we go. Once upon a time, there was a man named Oscar who he loved to mow his grass.
Yeah, well, I mean, his name was Oscar, but no one called him that. They called him Jiminy. And I mean, his grass was that fake turf that people play football on. So he didn't really mow
Every day, Oscar, what was the name that you gave him?
it. Jiminy.
Jiminy. Yes, and Oscar Jiminy. I guess everyone called him Jiminy. His driver's license says Oscar. He would go out with a fake lawnmower to mow his fake grass because that's what gave him real gratification in life.
Yeah, and then there was a dragon, and the dragon had a big fireball gun, and the dragon's name was Kick Ass.
Yeah, and Kick-Ass the dragon. Uh, uh, he blew fireballs all over Jiminy's yard, and all of the fake grass melted, so he had nothing to fake mow.
Yeah, Jiminy and the dragon Kick Ass, they fell in, they started making out real hard, and then they went off into space.
And uh, and there, you see, when you start messing around with the formula, not necessarily the formula, but like when you try to keep throwing the weird or the odd thing in there because you want to be noticed, it's hard to make that collaboration and build trust, right?
Absolutely. And some people, it's definitely an attention thing. And then there's also the idea of like, well, I'm trying to support, I'm trying to be funny, and I thought a dragon with a fireball gun or making out would be funny. So it's like they're really trying to yes and they just don't know how to do it.
Just, in my experience, the tip or the trick is really just been tell the truth. Take what came before and what's the next logical step.
Yeah, I don't know who said it first, but if this is true, what else is true? I'm sure you've heard that
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think we've all heard that one. Wasn't that like a thing on Sesame Street? If this is true, what else is true? One of
Oh,
these
might have
things
been.
isn't like the other.
Yeah. It's a great lesson for improv though. Like, okay, if he's mowing the lawn, then what else is true, right? Well, what's not true is that he's not mowing the lawn.
Yeah. Rich, this has been absolutely incredible. A huge help and exploration into collaboration and why it's necessary. Are there any other last tips or tricks or words of advice that you want to leave us with in how maybe the importance of using improv to harbor collaboration?
People think that improv is about being funny. And of course, funny is a product of improv, but improv is way more about listening than anything else. And if you're going to collaborate with people, the number one thing that's going to get in people's way is not truly connecting, listening, being affected by each other. I always say there's a little cheerleader in my brain every time that I improvise, but it's also anytime I have a conversation with someone like right now or a meeting or anything like that, a little cheerleader in my brain is going, be affected, be affected, right? Because what you say should matter to me. If I say the same thing that I was already thinking before you talked, and then I just waited till you were done talking and said that thing anyway, I wasn't really affected by you. I just waited till you were done and then said the thing I already wrote in my head. So listen, be affected.
Ooh, you've just described most conversations I've ever had with people.
Right.
Thank you for throwing me under the bus, or rather, thank you for giving me something to throw myself under the bus with. Uh, Rich, thank you so much for joining us again today. Again, if anyone is interested, check out this copy of Improv Made Easier by Rich Baker. Rich, where can people find this book?
I think go on Amazon to buy it, but if you want to find links to that or anything else, go to richbakercoaching.com.
You heard it here, richbakercoaching.com. Check out the book, check out richbakercoaching.com, and check out Pineapple Improv. Folks, thanks so much for joining us today, and we will see you next week with more improv trips and tips. More
Thanks so
improv
much,
trips and ticks.
I'll go on an improv trip with you anytime, buddy.
Oh, I'll bring the ticks.